Hey everybody, I am Brandy Kelly and I'm a superintendent on a mission to lead with hope. I'm also helping my fellow educators do the same. The Lead with Hope podcast is a bi-weekly podcast that will inspire and empower you to lead with hope. Check out my website at leadwithhope.net. On today's show, I am honored to welcome Dr. Bryan Pearlman. Dr. Pearlman is a veteran educator, school administrator, mental health therapist, PD leader, keynote speaker, adjunct professor, author, and I'm sure there's a lot of other titles we could throw in there, Dr. Pearlman. But his expertise is helping all children succeed. He addresses challenging behaviors, trauma, school improvement, mental health, and self-care, which are all very needed right now. So, Dr. Pearlman, welcome to the show. And I am, like I said, honored to have you on.
Thanks, Brandy. It's an honor to be here.
Yes. Well, like we were saying before the show started, we had to persevere and we had to push through to make this happen because of busy schedules. And you're in high demand right now.
A little bit. Things are a little
Yeah.
bit busy right now, but that's okay. Always make time because this is awesome. So glad to be here.
I appreciate you making time for me and for the show. And I'd like to start out with one of my favorite questions because I love meeting new people and hearing about their stories. So why don't you start off by telling us your story?
All right. Wow. This could take a while. I'll make it brief, maybe. I'll try my best.
Okay.
Thank you again for having me here. My story is I hated school, kindergarten through 12th grade. It was not made for me. Definitely not. I'm sure I had ADHD before that had a name. Definitely undiagnosed. Probably a reading and writing disability. Was also really gifted in math. So that made, I'm sure, a lot of fun for the teachers that had me going through. So I did not like school. I liked math. I liked a gifted program, and I really liked sports. Someone who, if my parents would have let me, I would have tried to drop out at 16 because it just wasn't for me. Had in my head the idea that I would become a teacher, perhaps administrator, something of that sort, and really try to affect schools in a way so kids like me and kids who just weren't in the middle or weren't typical or average or I don't know about normal, but maybe normal, would be able to succeed in school. And that became my mission. So I was a teacher. I taught fifth grade for a while. I was an administrator for a long time. And at some point, my next step was to be a superintendent. And me personally, I just didn't feel like that was the right fit. My wife's a therapist. She has a therapy practice here in St. Louis. So I decided I would come help her expand the practice. And through that, I ended up getting my own master's in social work. And it was just going to help me know what we were doing and help trainings and things that I do. I ended up falling in love with it. And so I became a therapist, amongst other things that I do. And as I mentioned before the show started, I was hoping to see about 15 people a week. The pandemic hit, and I'm averaging somewhere between 45 and 50 clients a week. Feel great about it. I think, Brandy, you and I both probably were practicing therapy as teachers and administrators just without a license. As an administrator, there weren't many people who just came just to say you're doing a great job or whatever. It's like people were struggling and often probably had mental health background to that. So briefly, that's my story. I just got into this field of education and mental health to try and help people, to succeed and succeed and exceed their expectations. So now I'm here.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, as an educator, that's why we go into education, as you said very well, to help people. And then just that natural progression into therapy for you has just taken you into a whole nother realm. Um, you know, I started my journey in education was a little bit different. I didn't start out as a teacher. I started out as a school social worker. So I got my license and I was a school social worker, and then I became a principal. So thinking about what you're doing now in your mental health practice, how do you think that if you had the skills and the knowledge and the expertise as a principal that you have now, how would that have helped you?
Oh my gosh, Brandy, I wish I had had a similar path to you, because I think that um, all administrators, probably all teachers, need more training, whether it's in counseling related things or social work or just mental health in general. In books that I've written, I think the part that people like the best are all the dumb things that I did or what I learned from my mistakes. And clearly, I would have done things a lot different. For a while, as a first time administrator, I literally think I suspended more people than anyone in St. Louis County. And I didn't know any better. Like, that's what we were told to do. And you send them out and they're going to come back better. And that never happened. Suspensions are not effective, especially for kids with high anxiety or depression, or even those that are, facing trauma. We're sending them home. They're spending more time in a negative, getting more anxious, feeling more depressed, maybe being more traumatized. And in some bizarre way, I actually thought they'd come back better, and that just didn't happen. So just that being one example of, if I had known this, I would have done things that I did later in my career and that I help with schools to try alternatives to suspensions, or really to get to what the antecedent is of a behavior, the function behind a behavior, and really help them to understand what's going on in someone's brain. The idea of a window of tolerance closing, fight, flight, freeze, that adrenaline goes, we get reptilian brain, our functional IQ can drop by 50 points, we can't communicate. It's like turning into the Incredible Hulk. And had I known that before, I would have done absolutely everything differently. So I definitely push for more training, more knowledge, more courses, more understanding of mental health. Because again, when my wife, she's been a therapist her whole career, we had the career of, here she was and here I was, as these separate silos. And actually there was so much overlap, and like, we just were never talking about these things. And when you realize that they're so interrelated, it just makes serving kids or helping kids or understanding them, that much more effective.
Yeah, mental health and SEL, that's definitely, those are areas that I'm very passionate about. And the Lead with Hope system, that was really born out of my own personal tragedy and trauma. And you're talking a little bit about ADHD. As a child, you grew up and you might have had that undiagnosed, you said. I'm wondering, with the kids that you see, the kids, the adolescents, your population, I'm wondering how many of those kids deal with trauma in addition to, or maybe they don't have a mental health diagnosis. Maybe it is just trauma, but I feel like trauma just masks so many other issues that our kids face. But in your experience, how many kids do you see on a weekly basis who are dealing with trauma?
A lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
I did as a principal, I do as a therapist. I don't know when and if they're going to update some of the ACE data, the adverse childhood experience stuff. But from pre-pandemic, the agreed upon thing was that about 2/3 of us faced at least one ACE, at least one adverse childhood experience,
Mm-hmm.
and that 1 in 8 of us had at least four of them, four or more. So
Mm-hmm.
when you factor that in, that doesn't include any mental health stuff, doesn't include living through a, hopefully once in at least 100-year pandemic. That, there's another statistic that half of adolescents would qualify for a mental health diagnosis. You take the half, the 2/3, you take the pandemic, you take everything that's going on, that's everybody.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's facing something. And whether it's, everyone's trauma can be different, everyone's mental health can be different. Everybody has anxiety. We do. It's
Mm-hmm.
probably a good survival thing that we have that in a little bit. But when it becomes moderate to extreme and it starts preventing us from doing things that we normally would like to do, that's where it becomes a problem. So, so often, I'm working on, what's the barrier, what's the obstacle, what are some things that we can try, how can we challenge some of our own negative thinking? How can we put a plan in place for success? And almost it's a universal thing because, I have the DSM-5 right, literally in arm's reach over here.
Mhm.
There's no Bryan page in there. There's
Right.
no Brandy page. If they say, okay, buddy, you got, 12% of your issue is anxiety, 18 is your ADHD, and 24 is your trauma history. Okay, that's fantastic. Like, what do I do with that?
Mhm.
There's nothing on my forehead, a billboard that reads, right now I'm acting this way because I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I've been re-traumatized. So I guess the long answer is to really look for universal strategies that just help us learn to kind of keep that window of tolerance open,
Mhm.
try and keep us from turning from Bruce Banner into the Incredible Hulk, to keep that communication, to learn ways to calm down. And in working with clients, I really focus on three things. If we have an undesirable behavior, looking at how do we reduce the frequency, so how often it happens, how do we reduce the magnitude, how big it gets, and how do we reduce the duration? If we can reduce any parts of those or all of those, that's a success. So
Mhm.
really looking at it through that lens, and in other ways, having clients report, self-report back what their mood rating has been every day, reflect at the end of the day. So we find out that Brandy, on
Mhm.
Tuesdays, you always seem to be like, zero's the worst day you ever had, five's average, 10's the greatest day ever. Why are Tuesdays a 4, Brandy? And what about Thursdays make it a 9 so we can kind of capitalize on what we're doing here and try to mitigate the things that are going on and at least just help with that awareness. So there's a
Yeah.
lot going on here and they're not mutually
Yeah.
exclusive. They could have 5 diagnoses. It's still at the end of the day, it's still Bryan or what Brandy or
Mhm.
whatever.
Mhm. Yeah, and you're hitting on the fact that it all starts with self-reflection. You
Mhm.
have to reflect on the behaviors, on the attitudes, on the mindset. You have to improve your level of self-awareness and build your self-efficacy. So, building those coping skills, whatever that may be, it's got to be individualized, and it all starts with self-reflection. The million-dollar question, and I don't know if you'll have an answer for this or not, but I'm curious if there is any one size fits all, like one coping skill that you would say that everybody needs, what would that be?
Wow, that is the $1 million
Yeah.
question. I may answer this by not answering this. So let me see how this comes out, and you can challenge me if I didn't.
Okay.
I find that for a lot of people that are dealing with anxiety, things related to anxiety, anxiety fueling depression, anxiety related with other things, transitions, grieving, etc. I
Mhm.
really feel like the idea of recognizing and challenging cognitive distortions, these negative thoughts that we all have, recognizing that we're doing it, learning how to question it, and really rewiring your brain has been one of the most effective strategies that I use and I've seen work with people. And things like, oh gosh, I'm catastrophizing now. I'm
Mhm.
fortune telling now, I'm magnifying, making this thing really big, or I'm minimizing it. Things like I'm stuck in black and white thinking, or mental filter where I forget that 99 good things happened today and one small insignificant thing, and now I'm just focused on that. Learning to ask questions and rewire your brain. Things like, how do I know if this thought is accurate? Where's the evidence to support it? Are there other things or other people that contributed to this situation? One of my absolute favorite questions is, what would I tell a friend going through a similar circumstance? Because if Bryan gives good advice but doesn't take his own advice, that makes me a hypocrite. And I'm literally going to have a blinking light in here that says, no hypocrites allowed. So I feel like, if nothing more, that people start oh, that's what that was. It isn't true. The majority of these aren't true. And they're more pronounced when I'm isolated or bored or already dealing with something, so that I stop it before, it becomes a point where, it's going to take a while to come out of this. And then other strategies, I love the idea when we feel like we're starting to turn into that green guy,
Mhm.
to squeeze ice cubes, right? Or get
Yeah.
fast exercise or listen to music or just do things. And then the other thing is having people recognize not that we're looking forward to a problem, but recognizing that sometimes these are predictable and avoidable situations. So kind of be prepared, have a kit or have a plan. I know my anxiety is going to go up when I go into that classroom and there's a substitute teacher, or I go in and now we're in the auditorium and there's so many people here, that we do have a plan in place, that we have it. So it's almost like our exit strategy, our escape plan, so that I can handle this and cope. Even just knowing I can go to the bathroom and splash water in my face. I can go to the nurse's office and just lay down for a few minutes. The idea really of being prepared can really help a lot. So
Yeah.
it's my one strategy, and I don't even know if I fully answered your question, but there's good stuff in there, I hope.
You did. You more than answered my question. And the thing that I love that you just said was that piece on cognitive distortions. We are our biggest obstacle so often. We get in our head, we catastrophize, we ruminate. I mean, we engage in all of these self-defeating behaviors. And if we could just get out of our way, be proactive, do the things that we know that we need to do to set ourselves up for success, we're going to see much more success in the people that we serve as well. And so it pays off big. It pays off exponentially. So you answered the question and you went above and beyond. So thank you. That was perfect. And it was a good segue into our next question, which hits on that Lead with Hope system that I've developed over the years. And like I said before, it's a system of self-efficacy. H stands for habits, O for optimistic outlook, P for passion, purpose, and perseverance, and E stands for excellence. So I'm curious, which one of those ideas resonate with you most and why?
I am totally going to take a cop out here. I
Mm-hmm.
think that they're all very important. I really do. And it's not like that's just the thing because I don't want to have a favorite child or
Yeah.
favorite staff person. I'm going to agree with all of it. I'm a big proponent of the glass being half full. So of course, optimism really matters to me, and it goes along with sort of positive psychology, or with the idea of, if I could start out the day with putting positive things in my mind and looking at the good things and being excited, days tend to be better, at least our perception of it. But if I get up, today's going to suck, it's going to be the worst day ever, everything's awful, sometimes that definitely does happen as well. I'm also a big believer in habits. When people say, I just don't know if this person's motivated or motivated to do, while I believe in motivation, going along with habits, I believe a lot more in momentum,
Mm-hmm.
right? That if we start something and we have those habits in place and those routines, and we just get going and doing those things, it tends to almost become like muscle memory. We just do it, it just becomes part of it. So if I say, get in the habit of saying one positive thing when I get up, or getting up with a purpose, which goes to one of your other
Yeah.
things on there,
Mm-hmm.
or tying that in with, excellence. I'm going to do the best that I possibly can. I really think that if you believe it and you say it, it does really impact things in a positive way. So, total cop out answer. I think all of them. The other P, passion really matters. As I work with clients, especially if people are kind of down or say they've just not had a really good, upbringing or life or things until this point, I try to really find out what their hopes and dreams are, and really help them say, like, you're going to become like a dog with a bone. You're going to be so laser focused on what you want to become and what you want to do. There's going to be no time for any of that other stuff. You're not going to have time to get stuck in your head because you're just going to be so focused. And I tell them, I'll be here for you. I will totally get you through the speed bumps or the barriers, whatever, and I'll be here to celebrate with you too, but really focus on this. So sort of the acronym of hope. Yeah, I like all of them.
Yeah. Well,
They're
thank you.
all my favorite kids.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And, you talked a little bit about that optimism piece and that habits piece. And it makes me think of the brain science. It tells us that, just those simple habits every day, they're like building blocks. And you can rewire your brain by engaging in specific behaviors or habits over time. And that can completely change your life. And, that's what you do. That's what you do every day with 50 clients a week, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
100%, you're spot on. Absolutely.
Yeah. So in life, you see this every day with your clients. We all face adversity, trauma. Everybody's story is different. But is there something specific that you have faced in your life, an adversity or a trauma that you're comfortable talking about on here that has kind of shaped you into the man you are today?
You know, there's probably a long list of things.
Mm-hmm.
The adversity and things, having a learning disability, I'm sure in reading and writing, an undiscovered one. Like I didn't really read on grade level till middle school. Um, Probably was a reason why I spent a lot of time in the principal's office, counselor's office, nurse's office, a lot of avoidant things. And also being in a gifted program, a lot of times going along with the traumas, having sort of an imposter syndrome of everyone keeps telling me you're gifted, you're gifted. If I'm so gifted, why can't I read? Why can't I write? Why are my grades not really good? I will say I remember it was either second or third grade. Mrs. Mott put on my report card, and I read it. Years later, Bryan won't be college material,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that's awesome. She
Yeah.
is no longer among the living, and I don't speak poorly of the dead, but it's like how many other kids, how many other people who maybe heard that or the actions from her cemented in them that I am going to drop out at 16 and I'm never going to have a chance to make it. It's almost like to some degree that was a fire under my rear end saying I'm going to show everyone wrong. I don't know why I can't read and write, but I'm going to figure a way. And my mom was very supportive and helped me find very high interest books. So from that standpoint, it really became, I wouldn't be the person I am today. The idea of having ADHD, for me was really hard, staying organized, a lot of executive function things. But as an adult, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I remember on an airplane flight to LA, I was giving a keynote address. I was so bored. There was nobody on the flight really to talk to. And I ended up writing like 5,000 words on the flight. Actually, I had to like tap me and say, buddy, we're in Los Angeles. You got to go. So being able to have that hyper focus has kind of become a gift. So between, having, learning disability, maybe gifted, I don't know. Maybe I'm not gifted. I gave it away. I'm not sure. And also having the ADHD has really became a gift. I do want to tell you a really quick, funny story on this. I went for my first admin interview, leaving the classroom, and I went in, and there was one person on the panel. I don't know. I must have rubbed her the wrong way. I don't know how. I'd never met her. So the interview went great. And right as we're about to go, she goes, "Oh, sir, could you tell me how many years of admin experience you have?" Well, she had my resume in front. They know I'm coming right out of the classroom. And I don't know why she did that, is to try and throw me off. So I'm a little quick-witted. I said, actually, I have 13 years of admin experience. And she's fumbling through the paper and can't figure out, sir, can you explain? I go, yeah, K through 12. I was in the principal's office all the time. I know how to do a master schedule. I know how to de-escalate a kid. I know how to talk to parents. I actually was really good at math. I helped do the budget for the principal. So I have 13 years of on the school, on the job training. She did not like that answer. Everybody laughed there. I ended up getting the job. And I would say that maybe she was put out as the person at arrival and pickup duty when it was rainy and icy out. But I'm not going to tell you for sure if I did that or not. That would be
Yeah.
kind of whatever. You can decide
Well,
if I really did that.
in my opinion, that was a fabulous answer. And sometimes people in our lives they do those things. Like you talked about the teacher, and in my K-12 career, I had great teachers, and I had a teacher like yours, one that I got engaged as a senior in high school. You think back on your younger self and you wonder why you did the things that you did, but it worked out. I'm still married, I will say, and I did get married right out of high school. But I digress. But anyway, I had a teacher that said, if you get married, you will never make anything of yourself. And I think that fueled me because if I'm not mistaken, we both have doctor in front of our names, even though yours doesn't display that on the screen. But we're both doctors. And like you said, those kinds of experiences sometimes can fuel our passion. They can spur us on. And I believe it is through adversity, through those difficult times, that's the bumps that we climb on in life, right? That's why we do some of the things that we do. And for that teacher today, I am grateful. I'm grateful that she lit a fire under my behind, and I'm glad that you had one to do the same as well. But we always want better for our kids moving forward. We want those positive experiences, but we can't forget that that grit is something that they need as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you have done so much in terms of writing books, being a keynote speaker, being an educator, a therapist, so on and so forth. What passion projects do you have going on right now that you would like to share?
There's a lot. I think it's the ADHD,
Yeah.
Brandy. It really keeps me. I do better when I'm really, really busy. Um, there are a few. I came out with my third book in December. It was the first book that really was more focused for parents than, and also for staff, but more for parents. I'm writing a fourth book. I've been writing a fourth book for a while. Maybe it'll get done soon. Passion project wise, I'm on the road a lot. This gets into the very close to getting to the really busy part where I'll be in many different states, many different schools, different conferences and things, which I absolutely love that. I love getting up and making people laugh, making them tear up a little bit, give them some tools, help with empathy and compassion. So I'd say that's a big passion project. My wife and I guess maybe 6-7 years ago, started a nonprofit, and that nonprofit, we work with certain schools, the board selects, and we spend a year or so with them and really do a needs assessment and really are there for everything mental health related, whatever it is that they need. We've worked with a school in Delaware. We finished up with them a couple years ago, worked with a middle school in Memphis, worked with 2 schools in Alaska, which is phenomenal, and kind of deciding sometime around the first of the year to decide moving forward if we're going to be looking more to schools that are geographically closer to us here. Because I could tell you, I've probably been up to Alaska about 12 times. And being from similar areas where we are now, that's about a 12-hour commitment each way. And that does show grit and determination and everything. But it's such a blessing. I also teach 2 classes at Maryville University here, the Ed Psych class, and I just love that. I feel like I'm able to catch people before they get into the field, as most of my time I'm spending working with people who are already in the field, and it just feels really good to stay current on things. It helps me in my speaking, it helps me in my writing, it certainly helps me with the clients. So that's a very long answer to a short question. I just keep doing this stuff. I turned 52 years old this year, and I'll never retire. It's just not going to happen. And mainly because I just love what I'm doing. If you love what you're doing, it's the best thing. It's the best passion project, is just really enjoying what you're doing, knowing that you're helping people, continuously learning and all that. So, I don't know, if I live to 100, I might still be carting around the country doing my trainings and maybe still teaching at the university. I'll be the oldest adjunct professor in the history of the world, maybe. So
Hey,
just a lot of good stuff.
that sounds like a good goal to have, Bryan.
That's the
Giving back to the people and forming those relationships. And I am extremely grateful that we were able to connect today. We were able to talk, and I think this is going to be a great episode. A lot of wisdom in this episode. And so, as we wrap up today, can you tell the listeners how they would connect with you if they wanted to learn more about you, bring you to their school, or even come to your clinic for some therapy?
Awesome. Well, thank you. I usually will say I'm not going to have a self promotion, whatever, and then I do anyway. So online, Most Valuable PD, short for professional development, mostvaluablepd.com is my professional development. The therapy practice is stlmentalhealth.com. I'm very active on Twitter or X or whatever it's called these days. I'm Dr. P _ principal. So Dr. P _ principal. Lastly, if they want to join a group of people that are involved in mental health, education, trauma, etc., we have a Facebook group, the Maslow Before Bloom Facebook group. You can get there just facebook.com/groups/Maslow Before Bloom, or just go to groups and type in Maslow Before Bloom. We're the only one there. I travel everywhere. I'm happy to do it. So long as the need is there, I'll continue doing it. And I hope you continue doing this, Brandy, because this has been awesome. And it's great to meet another fellow educator, mental health, admin person who's just as passionate about this work as I am, which is great. I love it.
And this was great. And I look forward to staying connected with you, Bryan. And for the listeners out there, this concludes this episode of the Lead with Hope podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. Thanks again, Bryan.
Thank you, Brandy.